Custom painting your DIY pipe project can be kind of intimidating at first. What kind of paint should you use? Will the paint even stick? Is it going to be worth it after it's all said and done? Today I'm here to say that you should go for it and also share with you the easiest and best methods that I've found for painting the maker pipe connectors. Doing so can really level up your project, and if you don't believe me, just check out some of these custom painted builds shared in the community. Now, you'll notice a lot of the pipes in those builds are also painted. About a year ago, we tested a bunch of different methods for painting galvanized pipes to see which ones were the best or easiest overall. We're going to mention some of those results in this video, but that video is definitely worth the watch if you only plan to paint the pipes in your build and not the connectors. I spent the last couple of days putting both our silver and black connectors through the same testing. This included various levels of prep work from none at all to cleaning, sanding, priming, and spray or hand painting the connectors. Then, I used a simple adhesion testing technique, which consists of scratching a grid in the paint and then ripping off a piece of tape to see if the paint sticks or comes off in chunks. Before we dive into the results, I want to mention a couple of things. First, when painting conduit, it's recommended that you hang up the pipes. This allows you to get an even coat all the way around the pipe. For the connectors, however, there's a couple reasons why you shouldn't really worry about painting the inside of them. Firstly, they clamp around the pipe, which means we don't see the inner parts of the connectors once they're assembled. Also, the conduit will be rubbing against the paint and chipping it off, so it's really not worth the trouble. This means we can paint them on the ground, which really helps prevent overspray and makes the experience a lot easier overall. If for whatever reason, though, you must paint both sides, you could also wait for one side to dry on the ground and then flip it over and paint that side. Another thing I want to point out is the connector bands and hardware. I left the bands on a few of the connectors to see how well the paint would stick. Surprisingly, it works pretty well, so you can paint over the bands if you'd like. Alternatively, you could remove the bands before painting the connectors and then apply some new clear or black bands after the paint dries. Remember though, if you're shrink wrapping the conduit in your build, you don't need to worry about the band, you can leave it off entirely. If you want to paint the hardware, I would recommend making a small jig like this to protect the threads. All I've done is punch a few holes in this box here and then put the bolt through so only the head is visible. Then you can paint the bolts without worrying about getting the threads. Once they dry, you can flip the bolts over and thread the nut on slightly and paint them in the same way. Keep in mind the paint may rub off when you tighten the bolt with a hex wrench. I have a solution for this, which actually brings us to our first result. If you're painting the connectors and conduit in your build the same color, then it's going to be easiest to completely build your project first, make sure the measurements and everything is exactly how you want, then you can spray or hand paint the assembled connectors and conduit all at the same time. This 2-in-1 spray paint and primer worked really well when I tested it on conduit last year. It also happened to be the second best method for painting the black connectors and the best method for painting the silver connectors. This means you can use it to paint the pipes, connectors, bands, and hardware all at once and get good adhesion. To prep the conduit and connectors for this paint job, I simply clean them with warm water and a degreaser. To hand paint the connectors and conduit at the same time, I found that simply degreasing them and then hand painting with two coats provided good adhesion. Now let's get into the best results for painting the connectors by themselves. The black connectors have the same type of e-coat that is used in the automotive industry for corrosion-resistant primer for car bodies and parts. For this reason, it's no surprise that there's very little prep work needed to paint the black connectors. I found that a light sand with 400 grit sandpaper and a quick clean provided the best adhesion on the black connectors. If you want to save a little time, you can simply clean the connector with warm water and then spray paint them or use this 2-in-1 paint and primer. As you can see, both methods provide slightly worse, but really good adhesion overall. I should mention here that this 2-in-1 paint and primer is combined into one can. It worked well for the conduit last year, the black connector, and the silver connector, as we've talked about. Weirdly enough, though, in another test when I did a separate coat of primer and a separate coat of regular spray paint, the adhesion was pretty bad, if not the worst out of all the ones that I tested. Because of that, you want to make sure to get the actual 2-in-1 spray paint can and not separate cans of primer and paint. The best methods for hand painting the black connectors are pretty much the same. I found that a light sand with 400 grit sandpaper and degreasing of the connector provided the best adhesion. Simply cleaning the connector first and then painting was actually a pretty close second, so again, you can get good results while saving some time if you need to. I used the same paint and procedures for the silver connectors, and the results were actually pretty similar to the black. The best method was simply cleaning the connector off and then spraying with this 2-in-1 paint and primer. Just like with the black connector, I found that lightly sanding the silver connector and then cleaning them provided the best adhesion for hand paint. Again, you could save a little time and simply hand paint after degreasing and still get good overall adhesion. Keep in mind that you'll most likely need at least 2 coats of hand paint to cover the connectors completely. I hope you found this video helpful and now have some confidence to custom paint your project and make it look awesome. All of the paints and other materials I used for the test will be linked in the description down below. If you have another method for painting that we didn't mention, let us know down in the comments. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.